There is a mental load when you're traveling, vegan or not, and I think when you're vegan, there's just a few extra worries and concerns. And some people just want to be able to relax when they're on holiday. They want to be able to turn their brain off, being able to have an experience where they can just really relax and not have to make any big decisions.
All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Fit Vegan Podcast. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Brighde, co-founder of World Vegan Travel, a tour company taking vegans around the world on unique and unforgettable travel adventures. So on their website, it reads, experience the world's best vegan tours, all-inclusive, worry-free, plant-based adventures. 100% vegan cuisine, all-inclusive and high-end advocacy and responsibility in travel with vegan celebrities. As a side note, Ivy and I, we looked into doing the Kilimanjaro trip with these guys. All right, welcome to the Fit Vegan Podcast. I'm your show host, Maxime Sigouin, and I'm the founder and CEO of Fit Vegan Coaching, a company that is on a mission to help 10,000 people get lean, thrive, and reduce their risk of chronic illnesses by 2033 and 1 million by 2050. I believe that having a fit, healthy body and mind is the foundation to living an incredible life. And this is what the show will give you if you choose to listen and implement. Enjoy the episode and have a great day. So very excited to have you on the show, Brighde. Welcome to the show.
I am so thrilled to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Maxime.
Yeah, of course. I wish we would have connected in person because I learned when we connected maybe a few weeks ago that we live literally like 5 minutes of walk from each other in Squamish.
It's crazy.
Yeah, we literally used to walk by your apartment when we'd walk with our dog to go for a daily walk.
Yeah, it's amazing. I had no idea that you were just around the corner from me. That's so awesome.
Yeah. So before we talk about vegan travel, I'm curious as to what made you choose to be based out of Squamish, BC. So, and for people listening, it's between Vancouver and Whistler. It's the place that people go to put gas before they get to Whistler.
That's how I always describe it. Yes, so it really was kind of like a last minute decision, I would say. So when I quit my job in 2019 to focus on World Vegan Travel, we were trying to decide where we would base ourselves. At that time, I was just finishing my job in Bangkok, Thailand. I was working in an international school there. And we had a few ideas. We thought maybe we could move to Western Canada, maybe France, or maybe stay in Thailand. And I remember we went to Koh Samui and we sat down and we wrote like a cost benefit analysis and we scored the pros and the cons of each choice and then added up the scores, and Western Canada won for a number of reasons, and Squamish won out over Vancouver because Seb's parents had just moved to Vancouver also, and a lovely place to rent became available. And we love being in the mountains. It really is such a beautiful place. So it felt like the right fit and it was a good decision.
Yeah, you're literally one row closer than me to the Chief, which is a big mountain for people listening. You hike it in Scotland. It's a hard hike. To hike the Chief. Yeah. Going down that, I remember my wife and I went up there, and coming down that same night, I had to put icy hot on my knees because they were just hurting so much from like how steep it was.
Yeah. A lot of very deep steps, I think, that are quite the killer at the end of the day. It's for sure. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So we'd love to talk about how you started in veganism before we get into like traveling, which I think, as a side note, is a beautiful thing. You literally found a way to travel the world for work, which is so smart. So like what brought you to the world of veganism and when was that?
Yeah. Okay. So I from a very young age, I had always been very empathetic with animals and really, really loved them. So even at the age of 7, like 40 years ago, even at the age of 7 years old, I remember I was living in the UK there because that's where I was born and raised. And we were walking to the local pond in some private land. There was public access to this pond, and we went and we fed the ducks. as we were walking home, some shots rang out, and there were some hunters that were hunting the ducks that I was just feeding.
Okay.
And I was inconsolable as like a 7-year-old. I really was so devastated. And from then, I really decided that I didn't want to eat animals anymore. And it continued that way for several years. And I lapsed for a couple of years or so, but I decided to make the decision to become a vegetarian. I didn't even know what veganism was, of course, then, when I was about 13, 14. And I was I stuck to that really, really well for many, many, many years. Fast forward until I guess we would say, 15 years ago now, I guess. I was living in Vietnam at this time. I had been traveling a lot. I had moved to Vietnam to be with my partner, who I had met when we were tour leading in Morocco. So I had tour led throughout Asia and Morocco and France as a vegetarian. I met my partner Seb in Morocco. We fell in love and we decided to move to Vietnam. So I moved to Vietnam, and at that point, I'm a little bit ashamed to say now that I was starting to kind of lose my enthusiasm for being vegetarian. I had traveled a lot, and I was starting to feel like that being vegetarian was like a real inconvenience. You know, Vietnamese food is kind of amazing and exciting, and you're missing out and all that kind of thing. Now, thankfully, I never stopped being vegetarian because very serendipitously, a podcast fell into my lap. So back in 2009, when there were not very many podcasts around, I received an iPhone. I think it was one of the first iPhones from my partner, Seb. He gifted me this smartphone. So, of course, I was very excited. And I've always really enjoyed audio reading or listening. So I discovered these things called podcasts, and there was a podcast in there called, at that time it was called Vegetarian Food for Thought. Now it's just called Food for Thought, hosted by Colleen Patrick Gaudreau, who I'm sure some of your listeners are familiar with. And the message in there just incredibly resonated with me. There wasn't a lot of resources to going vegan at that point, but I didn't need other resources because everything was in that podcast, not only the why to go vegan, but also the how to go vegan as well. So I made the transition really, really quickly. And then I wouldn't say tricked, but I encouraged my partner, who was not vegetarian. Seb, he was a meat eater at that point. And I sort of encouraged him to listen to a couple of episodes, particularly one of our early episodes on protein and calcium. Now that kind of information is fairly easy to access, but at that time, this just blew our mind that you actually might not need to eat animals in order to get these nutrients. Yeah. And that was all the information that he needed to make the switch, actually, because he always loved animals and didn't want to hurt them, but he thought it was a necessary evil. So we both became vegetarian, him vegan 6 months after I became vegan. And incredibly, we actually became friends with Colleen Patrick Gaudreau a few years later. And she was actually the inspiration behind us starting World Vegan Travel. So it's kind of crazy that the person that inspired me to go vegan is now somebody that we collaborate with on a regular basis on our vegan tours.
Yeah, that's amazing. I wish I would have known about podcasting. You know, I've been vegan for going on a decade now, and it was just, you know, magazines and maybe no one was posting on Instagram or YouTube. So yeah, I was kind of lacking resources. So I wish I looked at the podcast if that was around at the time. So it sounds like you guys were traveling quite a lot already before. Sorry, you're saying Morocco, you're saying Vietnam. What made you travel so much? Were you backpacking? Was it for work?
Good question. So I'll speak for myself firstly. I've always been very, very interested in travel. Like I mentioned, I was born and raised in the UK, and when I was 17 or 18, my whole family decided to emigrate to Australia. And that was my first experience of moving to another country. And Australia is fantastic and awesome, but that really did make me think for sure that I really wanted to do a lot more traveling. I was also very inspired by my mother, who also was a big traveler when she was younger, and she had all sorts of adventurous stories to share with me, traveling through Russia when it was, completely closed off in the Soviet Union in the 1960s. And it just sounded so, so cool. So I've always really been interested in traveling. And when I was 28, I think it was, at the time I was just traveling a lot in the holidays. And a friend of mine, a colleague of mine, put this job advertisement down in front of me in the newspaper, because that's how it was back then, saying that this tour company, Intrepid Travel, who maybe some of your listeners are also familiar with, they were advertising for tour leaders. So I applied and I was successful. And 6 weeks later, I was tour leading in Southeast Asia. I did that for 18 months. Then I did a year in France, and then a year in Morocco. And Seb was also posted, for want of a better word, he was posted to Morocco. And that's how we met each other. Seb has always been interested in traveling. He's done some really amazing trips, including like an 18-month trip from Thailand to Turkey, all overland, except for one flight because you can't fly into Burma or Myanmar. But he's done a lot of traveling, and it was and it still is been a very big part of our life all of this time. But after we were together in Morocco, we decided that we wanted to hang up our backpacks for a little while, and we moved to Vietnam, and we were there for 3.5 years. Then I got into international teaching, and I lived in Thailand and then Indonesia and then back in Thailand for 6 years. And then we started World Vegan Travel.
Well, it's a lot of travels. You just mentioned Myanmar. Is that how to pronounce it properly?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So I actually had a friend that lived there. You've heard of Lethway before?
Yes, but I've not been there.
Okay. So there's a form of combat. It's like Lethway fighting.
Oh.
It's called a 5-limb sport. So you can use your legs, your hands, your arms, and your head. And there's no pads. It's like bone to bone, skin to skin fighting. It's probably the most violent sport there is. He's the world champion. He's from my hometown in Canada, but he went over there. Yeah, just a little fun side story. You just mentioned Myanmar. Not a lot of people know where that is, but yeah, he's the world champion for Lethway fighting.
Lethway. I thought it was a place you're referring to, but it's a sport. Lethway, you say?
Yeah, it's like Lethway fighting or something like that.
Wow, I'll have to check that out. That sounds brutal, but interesting.
I had him on the podcast because he's vegan.
Amazing.
Yeah. Very hard head. I've seen him headbutt some people. But wow. Yeah, little side story. So awesome. You love traveling. You guys transitioned to veganism. Was the inspiration to start World Vegan Travel? Obviously, Colleen, it seemed like she had a role to play in that. But was it a part of discovering how hard it was to be vegan while you were traveling that inspired you guys? Because I would see that would be the main motivation for me.
Exactly. Yeah. So, of course, Seb and I had a lot of experience with our own personal travels. And of course, we had a lot of experience taking people around. And I should also add that it's not just that makes us do an okay job at this. Like Seb is also has worked in a lot of TV production as well. So a lot of logistics. And I've also worked a lot in education. So it's kind of a lot of merging of things. So one of the things that we did in about 2014, so just a few years after we went vegan, my partner Seb started dabbling in travel hacking. And for those of you that don't know what travel hacking is, it's basically collecting credit card points and redeeming for flights and hotels and other things. Now, at about this time as well, we had also become very good friends with Colleen Patrick Goudreau and her husband, and we were traveling a lot. And I would say that we had some incredible luxurious travel experiences that would not have been paying for out of pocket at that time. And I was always really disappointed as to the value that I would get compared with non-vegans. We all were. We both, Seb and I both were. Like, why is it that they're eating lobster and we're getting like tomato pasta with tomato sauce on there? That's really unfair. So when we were traveling with Colleen and David, like I mentioned, they also don't have children, so we traveled around with them a lot. And just over chats, we decided that maybe it would be interesting to take her followers that wanted to on a trip around Thailand. And we put together a trip. Colleen kindly trusted us with her brand, and we put a trip together, and it went really well. So that was the start of our first ever trip in 2017. And it was definitely a combination of our skills and what makes us excited, but also understanding that it's sometimes when you travel in a luxurious way and you really don't want any hassle and you don't want to have conversations with the chef or do a ton of homework ahead of time, then maybe a luxury vegan group tour might be a good way to get all of those things without any of the effort.
Absolutely. I'm personally very excited to do one of the trips because I've always done my trips solo.
Right.
Either with hitchhiking or with my wife now, and you're on Google on Happy Cow and you're trying to find a restaurant and you hope that you're going to be able to eat good food on this trip, that you're hoping to have a good time. The logistics must be a nightmare to kind of figure out, because again, it's high end, so kind of like the food and the experience to make sure it's smooth as possible. How do you guys navigate creating delicious vegan meals when you're in countries where veganism isn't the most popular thing?
It's a lot of work. So I think it would be better if I were to maybe use a particular trip as an example. Maybe that would give you a better insight. So for those that don't know, France is not a particularly vegan-friendly country or cuisine. I don't think that's a news flash for anyone. If you go to Paris, then without a doubt, there's tons and tons of vegan options, and there are maybe a couple of okay vegan options in smaller towns. But if you want to go out into the countryside, it can be really hard to find food and not only just to find food, but to have vegan versions of French cuisine or the regional cuisine where you are. So a region that I have loved for a very long time in France is a very rural area. It's called the Dordogne, which is in the southwest of France. For listeners that don't know, it's very famous for prehistory, like lots of incredible cave art. And beautiful countryside, amazing rivers, lots of people kayak down the rivers, and castles as well, like Middle Ages castles and things like that. And it's just a gorgeous area. It is also the home of foie gras. And that is a huge part of the cuisine there. In fact, when I've gone there, just by my own personal travel, of course, I never starve. Like, there's actually fairly good options in the supermarket. So for self-catering, it's great. It's okay. It's picnics, it's okay. But, maybe you want to stay in a hotel. Maybe you want to have vegan versions of the regional cuisine. So basically, I knew that I wanted to do a trip in the Dordogne and that it was not vegan friendly at all. If you go to Happy Cow and you search the map area, it's pretty sparse. So the first thing that we do, we knew that we wanted to base ourselves in one particular place. So we got on a hunt for a hotel that we thought would meet our requirements in terms of the size and the level of comforts and those kinds of things. And once we kind of identified a few, we have a conversation with them and say that we would love to bring a group to you, just so that we're a vegan group, so that we would be eating most meals at your hotel. So as a result, we would want something that's pretty special, and there's going to be a learning curve. Your chef has to be excited about this opportunity. And of course, we will do whatever we can to support. And in most cases, hotels are open to that. And we found a fantastic hotel in France. Sorry, in the Dordogne, just outside of Sarlat, in a very nice area that ticked all of the boxes, and they were open to doing this learning curve. So after they've agreed, we always organize our trips, with a long lead time, because experience has told us that these things take a long time and we don't want to stress. So let's just slowly work away at these things. But we will go there at least once or twice if necessary. And obviously, we're wanting to check on all of the activities, assign rooms correctly, go and meet potential guides, make sure that the guides don't accidentally start talking about the foie gras production, for example. And of course, we do tastings with the hotels and other restaurants that we've identified as well, particularly if they're non-vegan restaurants, because, they may think that they are great at vegan food, but and they might be, but we want to check to be sure. So really that's the process. And it happens over about, I'd say, 12 to 14 months or so.
What's the most popular destination that you guys run every year?
I would say the trip that has had the biggest response and sells out the most quickly, and maybe this won't come as a surprise, is our Japan trips.
Okay.
Yeah.
And why do you think that is?
Japan is super hot right now. Everyone is really interested in Japan. I think part of it was because it took them a really long time to open again after the pandemic. And Japan has a lot of soft power, I think, at the moment right now. People are really interested in Japanese cuisine and, anime and all of the other cool things that Japan has to offer. And Japan has a reputation a little bit like France, really, in that Japanese cuisine is not very vegan friendly. So when we go to an Italian restaurant in Italy, you can probably work something out. When I say that, I mean like a non-vegan Italian restaurant. You'll be able to get something, whether it's ordering off the menu or just making a little alteration to a dish that's already there. Chances are you'll be fine. But in Japan, like in France, when you go to a non-vegan restaurant, there's hardly ever anything there. There are exceptions to that, but very rarely can you find anything. And of course, there's the language barrier as well. So people are really torn between really wanting to explore Japan because they've heard a lot about it and it seems cool, and it is. And not only their fear of not being able to eat, but also they don't want to have to put in the effort to figure it out and just spend, 3 hours like traveling from lunch to dinner and not having time to do any sightseeing on the way, and then just feeling nervous or anxious or disappointed when you go to a place for a meal, or the restaurant's closed on a Monday when you turn up there, or something like that. So I think that those are the reasons why Japan is really popular right now.
Yeah, I think that's it is so true, because when you explore a new country, it takes a lot of headspace to figure out, like, what am I going to eat for lunch? What am I going to eat for dinner? Yeah, I've resorted to, I'm just going to have vegan protein bars, and I'm going to make protein shakes and eat fruits. And then if I find something cool, then I'm going to eat there. If not, because I've done those things where you travel, an hour and a half to get somewhere, and it's in a different language and you can't read, you call, you try to figure out, you get there and it's like, it's closed, or they don't have the vegan option anymore. And you're like, oh man, I lost an hour and a half of my life and I got to go back home.
Yeah.
The opposite direction.
Absolutely. And some people love the research aspect of travel planning. They love doing all of those things. Just like my partner said, he loves doing those things. But some people just want to be able to relax when they're on holiday. They want to be able to turn their brain off. They don't want to have to figure out how the Japanese public transportation system works.
Yeah.
And very often our travelers, they're from the US or from Canada, and they don't have a lot of annual leave. They don't have a lot of time off. So they really value being able to have an experience where they can just turn up and not completely turn off their brain, but just really relax and not have to
And enjoy
make any
it.
big decisions, because there is a mental load that you have to do when you're traveling, vegan or not. And I think when you're vegan, there's just a few extra worries and concerns. And if they want to alleviate that, then coming on a group tour with us or with another company is a great way to do it.
Yeah. What does the structure look like on a trip? Do people have moments where they can kind of go off on their own and explore, or is everything in a group all the time? Like, kind of how does
Yeah.
that work? I've never done group traveling before.
Yeah. Hmm.
And the one I was looking at was Kilimanjaro. So it's not like I can wander too much by myself,
Right.
right? I'd be with the group the whole time. So how does that work?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so every trip is a little bit different, but I would say that our general approach is making it so that you will get the fullest, I should say, the fullest experience in a way at a pace that nearly everybody will enjoy. So we're really not going to just sort of say, okay, you've got an hour and a half guide or an hour guided walk around Kyoto and the rest of the day is free.
Mm,
That's not really how we do things. Of course, people are free to opt out of any activities that we are doing because they're not interested and they want to relax or chill. But I will say most of the time, everybody joins all of the activities. But, our trips are not cheap. And part of that is because, we stay in very nice hotels, but it's also that we have lots and lots of activities and private group experiences that you might not be able to do on your own. So we do
yeah.
pack a lot in there. And generally the feedback that we get is people can't believe that they've done so much in such a short amount of time.
Yeah. Well, you say not cheap. I think it's relative for most
Of
people.
course.
Like, once
Yeah.
everyone experiences what it's like to kind of have that premium service, you're like, I don't want to go back to what it was before. And so then it becomes worth it. It's just like, I think it's just
Yeah.
expensive for people that have never done it until they experience it. And they're like, oh shit, it is worth it. And actually, I would have paid more because it was so smooth and hands off.
Yes. Yeah. For
Yeah.
sure. That's some feedback that we get for sure.
Yeah. I think I did like one trip that was all inclusive with Tony Robbins last year in
Oh,
October
wow.
with my wife. It was like a private trip. It was a relationship trip with my wife. And
Oh,
it was like 20 grand for a week for my wife and
right.
I. But it was everything, like helicopter rides. We got to
Yeah.
go and like support the local community in Hawaii because of the fires. And it was my first experience of high end service. And I was like,
Yeah.
this is phenomenal. I would do more of that.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to ask you another question about the trips. And for the people listening, I hope you guys are enjoying this because selfishly, I'm getting like a free consult and I get to ask all my questions to Brighde. Uh, so for Kilimanjaro, how does that work? Is that one of you guys' like more physical trip that you do, or do you have other trips that are like similar in terms of
Mm.
physicality?
Yeah, good question. So we really, we've been going for a few years now, but I still feel like we're a baby company, to be honest. So we're just sort of like trying things out and seeing what works. And Kilimanjaro is definitely a more physical trip, of course. I would say that generally speaking, our trips are less physical. Sometimes there's a few physical options that can be done, that can be added in there. But and they're sort of more like your typical luxurious higher end sightseeing trip that's made vegan. But the
Yeah.
Kilimanjaro, of course, is very different because for listeners that don't know, you are hiking up a big mountain. You're actually sleeping in tents that are
But it's a
set up
high
and
end
packed
tent.
up. Yes, yes. So we've done a few things to try to make the experience as premium as it can be, but it is still camping, I
Yeah,
should
yeah.
say. And a few of those things are, for example, we've up level the tents so that people are able to stand up in the tent. So that just makes it easier for getting dressed and undressed. We have
Yeah.
actually got hot showers. We've got an amazing vegan caterer in Arusha who has planned an incredible menu So that's all going to be going up. And then we have a replenishment of fresh fruits and vegetables on day 4 of the trip, because by then, because there's no refrigeration, right? So
Yeah.
by then, a lot of vegetables will have wilted, and we know that vegans really want to have not just refined carbohydrates. They want to have leafy greens and an abundance of vegetables. So we're having somebody catch us up, because the porters there can do that. They're very fast compared with us.
It's impressive.
Yes, and then they can bring up the next lot of fruit and vegetables. So those are a couple of things that we're trying to do to make the trip a little bit more premium as well. And of course, we always include tips, because tips on a trip like that is very expensive. And one of the things that we want to do for our travelers, we don't want anyone having this mental load of like, oh my goodness, I don't know if I've got the right money on me, or how much should I tip? What's not enough? What's too much? So we just include that in the price, and obviously you see them receive the tip, and everyone is very happy. So you don't have to worry about that. And of course, that everyone is tipped very well.
Yeah,
the team.
no, I'm personally very excited. Once I'm allowed to travel, once this whole immigration process thing is done for me, I'm excited to go. I'm going to go with you guys, because I was looking into Kilimanjaro trips, and I was like, yeah, but they're eating like chicken and things like that, and I was like, what am I gonna? I don't want to eat rice and beans the whole time I'm going up there, right? Like I want more diversity, and I don't want to have to be stuck kind of figuring it out. So when I saw you guys, I was like, I don't even have to think about this thing. Like you guys will just take care of it. I just need to show up. That's it. That's all I want.
Awesome. Well, you would be most welcome, Maxi. We'd love to have you on the next trip. We're thinking 2026.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I should be able to travel by then. I want to put it on YouTube. I don't know why, but it's always been on my bucket list to do Kilimanjaro. I've never really liked climbing mountains. It's just been there. And so we'll just need to check it off, basically. Yeah. Would love to ask you guys, how many trips you guys do a year? Because there's quite a lot on your website.
Yeah, so we do want to grow a little bit more, but we do 8 or 9 a year, I would say. This year we will have done 9 by the end of the year. Next year, probably 8. And then moving forward, I would say, maybe 10 to 12, but a lot of work to do before then.
Yeah. What is your personal favorite trip that happens every year?
Yeah, we don't have a trip that happens every year, but I do have a trip that we have done several times that I absolutely love. I mean, they're all special to me in some way, but I think maybe one of the more interesting ones is our trip to Rwanda. We're going back to Rwanda for the 4th time with the group in November this year. And I think it's so nice because, well, Rwanda's an amazing place, but our travelers usually don't know so much about it, and they're always really blown away by Rwanda as a destination. And that's because it is so incredible. So I would say Rwanda is my favorite.
Oh, beautiful. You guys also do a trip with the NHA. So I was just recently at the NHA conference, maybe last month in Cleveland. So you guys also do a whole food plant-based and SOS trip.
SOS free trip, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this was very exciting and a new challenge. We collaborated with the National Health Association. So you went to their conference, right, Maxine?
Yeah.
Yes. So we collaborated with them, and they hosted their first trip to Tuscany this year, staying at a vegan villa. That was amazing. And we're also hoping, we're just about to launch a second trip there for 2025. And incredibly, we're also going to take the NHA on 2 trips to Cape Town and Botswana at the end of 2025. Traveling whole food plant-based SOS free is significantly more challenging than traveling as a vegan. So those trips have sold out, and I'm really so excited to work with Wanda Huberman and the amazing NHA team.
Yeah, Mark and Wanda are awesome.
Yeah.
The great people.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Yeah, because a lot of our audience is whole food. Like our whole company is whole food plant based,
Right.
and so it's good for them to know that there are whole food plant based trips. But ultimately, a lot of them, vegan food. I love when I travel. It's not always whole food plant based. Like I
Yeah.
want to try some of the cuisine wherever I'm going, because it's such a big part of the culture and the experience to be able to eat in the country that you're traveling to.
Mm-hmm.
And it sucks sometimes that it's just there's nothing
Yeah.
for you to eat, right? And it's not
Yeah.
vegan.
Yeah.
Um, so for the people listening that would be interested in, booking a trip with you guys, how does that work, right? Like, I already know the answer to these, but is a flight included? Like, how does it work once
Yeah.
they book? What do they have to prep for?
Great question. So people would go onto the website and they would find a trip that they're interested in. Something that's very important to us is that the trip will be a good fit for the person that's traveling. So I'm very open and available to answering any questions, to make sure that they feel that this is a good fit for them. Sometimes people take me up on that offer and sometimes they don't. And then they book and they pay a deposit. Depending on how far out the trip is from departure, maybe they will have to wait a little while until the trip is confirmed to depart. That means that we have reached our minimum. We haven't had to cancel a trip due to lack of sign-ups for quite a while now, so that's great. And then, after the trip is confirmed, we have like a second payment, and then 3 months out, we have the third payment. And the trip includes everything except the flight to the destination. So sometimes there will be an airport transfer to the starting hotel, sometimes not, but it's all very clearly communicated. And once you start on the trip, we'd like to say that you can really even leave your wallet in the safe. You don't really need it unless you want to buy souvenirs or do shopping in some free time or something like that. You also do need travel insurance as well. That's not included. A lot of people, we really encourage people to get travel insurance as early as possible. And if they're worried that something might bubble up that will stop them traveling, that they consider purchasing a cancel for any reason policy, that can be helpful too. But really, it's everything except flight and travel insurance. We encourage people, if they can, to arrive the day before if their schedule will allow, because we want people to be able to start the trip feeling as fresh as they can,
Yeah.
and to allow for any flight delays. Of course, not everybody's not everybody's schedule will allow for that, but that's what we suggest.
Yeah, and trying to be jet lagged a little bit, at least kind of like have like 1 day in the country to get
Yes.
used to it.
Yeah.
So that's great. So people don't have to pay upfront in one lump sum. They can basically do a deposit and kind of have like a payment structure
Yes.
for it.
Yes, depending on how far the trip out. If the trip's leaving next month, then you'll probably have to pay the whole thing.
Yeah, you missed out on the payment option. Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. So yeah, anything else that you would like to share with the audience about, world vegan travel? Because I think it's a beautiful thing that you guys are doing,
Oh,
because
thank
it is
you.
definitely gaining in popularity, and it definitely is a pain in the butt to schedule everything yourself. And if you're in a
Mm-hmm.
country where you don't speak the language and yeah, you're trying to order something, you get it, you're like, I feel like that's
Yeah.
chicken. That's not, or you say
Right.
vegan and they think that eggs are vegan or cheese
Yeah.
is vegan. They don't know. So yeah, what's some information that you'd like to pass off to the
Yeah.
audience?
I guess I would consider that if you haven't traveled much before and you feel a little bit nervous about traveling to a place that you've never been to before. I mean, we do have travelers that travel with us that have never left their country of their home country before. And traveling on a group trip is really fantastic because you kind of get a bit of a lay of the land. So we have another example pops into my mind. Is that we have some travelers. Coincidentally, they actually also live in Squamish. They traveled with us
Nice.
before we moved here. And they had never traveled to Africa before. And they came with us on a Botswana trip they loved it so much. And now they have a feel for it and they know what to expect and they feel like they can do it by themselves. So traveling in a group is a really kind of low risk, low stress way to sort of dip your toes into travel. And whether you continue doing group travel or you prefer to do more independent travel or a mix of the two moving forward, it's a really nice way to travel in a way that feels safe and you're not alone. You're supported, and if anything happens, there's lots of people who've got you. So I guess consider group travel if you've never traveled before or it's a destination that you're a little bit worried about.
Yeah, it eases you out of your comfort zone, just so that safety net and people that are there to kind of be responsible and help you with everything. Because, yeah, I've hitchhiked to some places that you're
Right.
like,
Yes.
how am I going to handle this? Right? This is sketchy. This is weird. Should I even sleep here tonight? Should I walk in the streets at this time to kind of get to my destination? But I don't speak the
Right.
language to get a cab. And so, yeah, you're on Google Translate. You're trying to you're trying to communicate with someone. I've been there.
Yep. Yep, for sure.
Awesome. So, Brighde, I just want to say massive thank you for taking the time to record with me. I hope that when I'm able to go back to Canada, we'll meet up. I know there's a Asian restaurant on the main street of the old downtown Squamish that has a vegan pho. Did you have that one?
Yes, I'm embarrassed to say I have not gone to that little Vietnamese restaurant yet. I always go to the Japanese one, Taka Ramen or something like that. I always go there. But so the pho is good there. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, it's the one on like on the old
Yeah,
downtown
I
road,
know
right?
what you
So
mean.
yeah. Oh, my wife and I would eat there. Like we get that pho 4 times a week.
Okay, I'm going there tomorrow. Thank you for the
Is
tip.
so good. It is so good. We spent way too much money, and it was winter too. It was cold, so it was kind of perfect. But yeah, definitely check that out. And for everyone listening, I will link down below the website, the Instagram. I know you guys have a YouTube channel as well. And so I'll put all down below so you guys can go and check it out. And when I'm ready to go to Kilimanjaro and I'm able to, that's honestly I would go right now, but once I'm able to, I will make a public announcement of it that Ivy and I will be going.
Yeah,
And then if any of you want to join us, then we'll just tell you the dates that we're going, and then you guys can kind of join us, and we'll have some
that
good
would be
vegans on the trip.
awesome. I think that
Yeah.
would be a great fit for you for sure, Maxime. I want to thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about World Vegan Travel. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. You guys are doing something amazing, and I wanted to make sure the world knew about it. And so, everyone, go check out those links. Thank you for listening to the episode, and we will see you in the next one. Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.